Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gloria of Gloria's Knits, and today will be podcast number 6. No, I think it's number 7. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's one of our knitting podcasts, and I'm so glad you guys are joining me today while I talk about what I'm wearing, any finished objects, works in progresses, and any plans and acquisitions at the end. So if that's something that you think you will enjoy, make sure you subscribe to my channel, and let's just jump right into today's video. Okay, so first off, we'll start with talking about what I'm wearing today, and this is my holiday Christmas sweater, which I know the holidays are over now, but I wanted to give it one last wear before I put it away until next year. So this is the Nova sweater pattern by the Knit Purl girl. It's basically a circular yoke pattern with some color work on the yoke here on the front and the back, with some stockinette for the body and 1x1 ribbing for the cuffs, the bottom hemming, and also a folded over collar. So pretty simple. It's my first color work and circular yoke pattern in terms of a sweater garment. So it is a lot of like new things for me to learn. And I would say it was a good learning experience for sure. Definitely the color and yarn choice is not my absolute favorite. I think this red is a little bit too bright for me, but otherwise it was good that I was able to use up some stash yarn that my mom had of this yarn. And I think the fit works out for me. Like it's got a good positive ease on me, not too baggy and not too tight. I knitted this in the 4th size, I believe, so size D in the pattern. I don't know if I mentioned this, but the Nova sweater is actually a free pattern by the Knit Purl girl, which is really nice because as I'm kind of dabbling into color work, I didn't really want to spend money and purchase a pattern. So it was good that this was a free option and pretty well written, in my opinion. I didn't really have any like problems with the way that the designer wrote this pattern, so definitely easy to follow. In terms of the colorwork chart, I think it's really nice and pretty. There aren't like really long floats or anything like that, so it was really kind of easy to not have to catch my floats in the back or like, you know, secure them so it doesn't snag or anything when you're putting it on over your head. So I think that was a really good beginner pattern in that sense. So the only modification I really did was just the collar. I picked it up after I cast it on and did the yoke. Well, actually, once I finished the body, so I did pick up some stitches for the collar and then I folded it over and then bound off that way, as opposed to starting with the cast on edge and casting on directly starting the ribbing. So I found that a little bit easier. It allows you to kind of change up the collar if you wanted just a single layer collar. Is that what you call it? I think so, or a folded over collar, and it allows you to kind of just like adjust more based on how the sweater is fitting. If you wanted a taller collar, if you wanted a mock neck, if you wanted a turtleneck, like just whatever it is, you get to choose by picking up the stitches for the collar afterwards. And I think it also makes it less likely to stretch out because it has a stronger like support around the edge of the neck. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say about the Nova sweater from the Knit Purl girl. I enjoyed this pattern. I wouldn't knit it again. I think I only need one of this, and if I chose a different color, I think it would not be a Christmas sweater. It would just be a regular color work sweater. So yeah, let's move on to finished objects. I'm really excited to show you guys my first finished object. Actually, my only finished object, but it is the Moby Sweater. So it is a sweater pattern by Petite Knit. Surprise, surprise, I've knitted a lot of her patterns, but this one is a cabled sweater with some cables going down the 2 sides along with the sleeves. And then there's this like mock cable lattice structure design in the middle with some double moss stitch on the side of the garment. So pretty, I would say, not, it was straightforward. I would say definitely straightforward and engaging, but easy to memorize. I think it would be a good first cabled pattern for a lot of beginner knitters. It wasn't my first one. My first time doing cables was actually for the Blue Wave cardigan, which I haven't finished yet. I put that one on hold because it is on slightly thinner yarn. It's more like a lacy pattern, so I didn't really need it for the winter time. I kind of wanted to wear it more for spring or like late summer, fall. But the Moby sweater is kind of like a much thicker garment. And let me show you guys how mine looks. So I don't know if I mentioned it, but it is a drop shoulder pattern. So as you can see, the whole body, The whole sleeves, the neckline, everything is complete. I even blocked it for this video. To be fair, I actually even wore it out. Yeah, I wore it once to dinner already, and I really enjoy this. I love the color. It literally blends in with my background. But it's a very neutral color, and I knitted this in the Patons Classic Wool Worsted yarn that I bought from Michael's. I used under 6 skeins, so I think it was about like 5.5 or 5 3/4. But I was a little bit worried about yarn chicken initially because it looked like the sweater, the body of the sweater was actually eating up a lot of yarn. So I was worried that I wouldn't have enough to make it the length that I wanted to get with the sweater, because I wanted a full length. I didn't want it cropped in any sense because it is a very traditional looking sweater pattern. I want this to last a really long time. So number one, I chose a very rustic yarn that would be very durable and practical. And number two, I knitted to a length that I would be comfortable wearing even later in the future. Once I get older, maybe I wouldn't be into cropped sweaters anymore. So those were my two kind of main requirements for this garment. And yeah, I achieved both. So I ended up knitting maybe like a little bit of the body, so that right after I connected in the underarm, I knitted a little bit of the body, and then I started working on both the sleeves just to see how much yarn I would actually need to create the sleeves to a length that I would be happy with. So this actually goes way past my like bracelet length, like wrist bone here. So it kind of covers a little bit of my hand, which is perfect. I love when my sweaters are a little bit longer like that. I love being able to grab my sweaters like this. And I think it's very cozy and it works well for this sweater. And so after I knitted both the sleeves and the collar, I went back to the body and I just knitted it to a length that I was very comfortable with. It was a little bit hard to kind of gauge how long the sweater actually was post blocking while I was actually knitting it, because I knew the cables would really open up and the double moss stitch on the side would really open up as well. So I knew that the sweater would shrink lengthwise and widen widthwise. So because I didn't actually do a gauge swatch, I kind of, was living life on the edge here and just hoped that the lengths that I was going for would actually block out to the finished garment size that I wanted. Ultimately, I did measure the finished garment right before this video, and it's actually a little bit smaller than what is intended in the pattern. So I did knit the size extra small in the pattern, which is the smallest size. And with that size, I believe it should have about like 40 inches across the bust, which would give me about 8 inches of positive ease. So it was actually quite a bit smaller. It was like 10 centimeters smaller than what was suggested in terms of positive ease. So it does still give me some positive ease, but it doesn't give me 8 inches, obviously. So 10 centimeters is about 4 inches, so 4 inches smaller than what was expected. It's not a baggy fit for sure. So it's more a comfortable, not oversized cabled sweater, which I'm totally fine with. It's very comfortable, it's warm, and I don't regret using the needle size that I did. I already went up a needle size to 4.5 millimeter. The pattern suggested 4 millimeter. So at 4 millimeter with this worsted weight yarn, I think it creates a very comfortable fabric. It doesn't make it too gapey. It doesn't make it too thick. I think it's perfect. So would I have knitted it in a bigger size if I could go back in time? Maybe, but I don't know. I'm pretty content with the fit of the sweater, and I think it is a good warm sweater despite, there is some gappiness between the stitches because it is double moss stitch. So if you like really stretch it out, obviously wind will go through, so it's not like 100% super warm, but I think it's warm enough. Like for Canadian Toronto weather, it's perfectly fine. And I actually really tried to block out the sleeves. It was a little bit hard. I did a little steam block after I did my wet blocking because the sleeves were kind of like folded in a way where the cables weren't able to open up when it was blocking. But I did try to aggressively block it so that I could stretch it widthwise as much as I could and pin it down so that it wouldn't shrink as it was drying. But as I wore it, I think it did shrink back a little bit, even though it was already dry. So I don't know. I think that's just how like the wool works, and I'm not mad about it. I'm really happy with this finished garment actually. and I love the color, I love the fit, I love everything about it. I love how I'm able to like tuck it into my high-waisted jeans or pants and make it look like really cool, but not feel like it's like engulfing me and it's like too oversized. Sometimes you don't want too oversized. Sometimes you just want like a normal fitting loose garment, and this is exactly what I was hoping for. So yeah, very happy with this finished garment, and I would really recommend it to anybody who wants to try out cables. It looks like it would be difficult, but it's honestly not too bad and very easy to memorize. Like I said, for the charts, I barely had to look at it after I finished the short rows for the back shaping of the shoulders, and after I finished the neckline, when it was just like in the body and on the sleeves, super easy. I didn't have to look at the charts at all. It was just memorized. And yeah, you do have to like kind of switch it up a little bit when you're knitting flat versus when you're just knitting in the round, because every side is a right side row. But yeah, I think very easy to manage and read your knitting. The only issue I had was I had to make sure I was counting the number of rows in between the cable twists, because if I didn't have enough rows or I miscalculated, I would twist too early and then the cables would be like too short. I did that for one of the sleeves actually, so I had to ladder down and fix that twist in the cable. So that was a lot of work and quite the headache, but yeah, that just made me realize that it's very important for me to keep track of the rows. What I do is I usually put a stitch marker on the row where I twisted the cable, and then I count from there the number of rows needed before the next twist happens. So yeah, I was able to do the cables without any cable needle. So yeah, it was really easy. The cables aren't too wide, so it was easy to just not use a cable needle. But if you're more comfortable with a cable needle, go right ahead and use it. I think that's all I have to say about this one. I'm very glad I finished this even with yarn to spare. So if anything were to happen, I would be able to, you know, just go ahead and fix it. Like if there was a hole, I could mend it. If I wanted to change up the collar or like fix a sleeve because it was getting all ratty, I could also fix it. So it's good to have the same dye lot and a little bit of the yarn left to make any of those adjustments if I were to need it in the future. Oh, I do want to mention one last thing. So this is another modification I did, which is the collar. I actually didn't do a folded over neckband. I did a shortened, just single like ribbed collar, and then I did some tubular lip bind off. So I think this really matches the sweater. Like I didn't really want it too bulky. I saw a lot of the colors in other people's Ravelry projects. It looked really bulky and I don't think that's really my style. And because my yarn is already quite thick and heavy, I didn't want it to feel like it was going to be too much on my neck, and it's already a very warm sweater and a very heavy sweater, so I just thought it would kind of suit the garment a little bit more to have a thinner collar. If it does end up getting a little bit loose and stretched out, I will feed in some elastic on the inside to just try to cinch it back in, but for now, since it's a fairly new garment, I don't think it's gonna have any issue. Also, this is like a really good like drapey fabric that it produced in this like textured like double moss stitch and cable. Yeah, really like this. One of my favorite garments, I would say. Yeah, very warm, and I absolutely love it. I'm actually quite impressed that I'm able to wear this like with just a tank top underneath. Initially, it felt really scratchy and itchy on my skin, but I feel like I got used to it maybe, or maybe I was just being too harsh on this yarn. It's actually not as itchy as I thought it would be, but it could be because I'm not like sweating or anything like that. I'm just like literally sitting here filming. So that's why it feels okay. But anyway, that's besides the point. Let's move on to my next work in progress. This is going to be the Just sweater, and it's a sweater by the designer Mamie Choi. I think she goes by Soop Knits. She seemed to have rebranded herself. I talked about this many times, but this Just sweater is a pattern on Ravelry and it's free. So I just was looking for a drop shoulder pattern that I could easily modify to whatever I kind of really wanted, and it didn't have too much positive ease. So this one, I think with me knitting the smallest size, it was totally okay, especially with a yarn that is on a smaller needle but a thicker yarn. So I'm using a worsted weight yarn, the same yarn as I used in my Moby Sweater keyboard sweater. That one is a different colorway. Of course, this one is more a brown color, and I casted this on a while ago, but I seem to have just put it on hold while I was focusing on this Nova sweater and the Moby sweater. So now it's top priority to finish this as well. And I did do a little bit of progress on this Just sweater. So this is how it's currently looking like. There's no change to the body whatsoever, but as you can see, I did knit an entire sleeve. So this is how the sleeve is looking like right now. A little bit about the pattern. It's a drop shoulder. It has a folded over neckline, a stockinette body, and the sleeves have 1x1 ribbed cuffs. So with the sleeves, I did do a bit of modification. I didn't have any trouble with picking up stitches, but because I must have knitted the back and front panels a little bit longer than what was suggested, when I did the pickup rate for the sleeves, I ended up picking up more stitches than what was suggested in the pattern for the size that I was knitting, which is the smallest size. And I ended up having about I think 84 stitches that I picked up, despite using the same pickup rate for the Just sweater. And because that happened, I have a larger armhole, so I had to do more decreases in order for it to taper into a size that is comfortable for my wrist. So this is quite tapered actually, so it's pretty like tight on my wrist if I were to wear it right now. Hopefully once it blocks out, it will loosen up a little bit because it is super, super tight. But I still rather have my cuffs too tight than too loose, because when it's too loose, I hate when I'm not able to like roll up my sleeves like this, because if I'm washing dishes or anything that requires my hands, I don't want my sweaters to drag into whatever it is I'm like doing. And that just makes it less practical, at least for my day-to-day use. So for this one, even though it's a little bit tight, I think I could just like block it out a little bit and stretch it so that it is okay. I know with drop shoulder construction patterns, they usually kind of relax the drop shoulder part. It drops more. So with the sleeve length, I actually knitted it to about bracelet length. And I'm hoping that once it blocks, it will extend past my wrist bone and just go a little bit into my like hand, and that is the perfect sleeve length. So yeah, that's really what I did on this Just sweater so far. I haven't really done all that much else. Like I said, I did have to decrease a lot more times than what was suggested in the pattern, which is not a big deal because I started off with more stitches, obviously, because I picked up more stitches, but I have longer arms than what the pattern, I guess, suggests for sleeve length. So my sleeves are a little bit longer, and that's why I was able to fit in more rounds despite using the same like decrease rate as the pattern. I just added more decreases. So I did more rounds of decreases and ultimately left with a kind of, you know, nice tight cuff and a nice tapered sleeve at the same rate. So literally decreased all the way to the very last row, and then I started doing the ribbing. I think it's really nice. I do find that before blocking, after picking up the stitches for like drop shoulder, like this seam part, like this faux seam, I guess, always feels like it's a little bit elevated and weird in my opinion, but after I block it, it usually sits a lot more flush and doesn't look as like bumpy. So hopefully that does kind of even out. Oh, stitch marker attached to my sweater. Okay. These stitch markers are a little bit dangerous. But yeah, I don't know if you guys do the same thing. For every decrease that I do, I usually put a stitch marker. Sometimes I run out of stitch markers, so there's like random gap here, but that's usually when my partner finds random stitch markers all over the floor because they seem to wander and get lost. So yeah, I ran out of stitch markers for the sleeve. I think I did about 18 rounds of decreases. I usually put all the details in my Ravelry project page, so check it out if you want like exact numbers. This is a free pattern, so I'm not afraid to say the exact number of like decreases or number of stitches that I picked up compared to the pattern. But yeah, I picked up more stitches and I decreased more compared to the pattern. But yeah, I tried it on and I do really like the fit of it. I liked how I changed the neckline, which I talked about in my previous knitting podcast, so I won't go over that again. But yeah, hopefully I can finish up the second sleeve and then work on the body next. And hopefully I have enough yarn. I, once again, am playing a little bit of yarn chicken, so that's why I decided to do the sleeves first. I generally don't like doing sleeves before I finish the body because I find they get in the way when I have both sleeves done and then I'm working on the body and it gets really heavy. But anyway, that's too bad. I have 5 skeins of this Patons classic wool worsted, so even less than my Moby sweater. My Moby sweater had 6 skeins and I used 5.5 for that one. But because I'm likely going to do a more cropped length and it is a stockinette pattern, it should use less yarn, and I think 5 skeins should just about cut it. I'm literally going to try to use as much as I can of that yarn and finish the yarn so that I can have the longest possible sweater I could possibly have for this just sweater. This is top priority for, I guess, my work in progress, and hopefully will be done by the next knitting podcast. In terms of plans and acquisitions, I didn't purchase any new yarn or notions or needles or equipment or anything like that for like this month or even previously. I usually don't buy all that much. I take my time kind of working through my existing yarn stash, and it never gets really all that big. I usually just steal yarn from my mom's stash, which constantly grows. So that's more so a her stash problem. But yeah, I'm pretty good with using up my yarn. In terms of plans, I will be working on the Eva cardigan next, which I talked about in my winter knitting plans video. That one is next on the list because it is already a finished garment, but I do want to make some modifications to it. I do want to make the entire body longer, and because I don't really want the ribbing to be all that much longer, I want to add like about 2 inches to the body, if not more. And by doing that, I might either frog the entire body ribbing and then work 2 more inches of stockinette before doing ribbing again. But I feel like I took so much time to do that ribbing because it is so long. I don't really want to frog the entire thing, so I'm contemplating on potentially just cutting the top of the ribbing and then putting both sides on lifelines, knit more stockinette, and then connect the 2 pieces using a Kitchener stitch, I believe. So that would be a completely new technique that I would have to learn and be able to do. I'm a little scared to do that. I might try it out first on the sleeves because I also do want to extend the sleeve by about 1 inch or so and just have a bit more of a kind of like cover my palm type of sleeve as opposed to just very, very bracelet length. I just think because the sweater is so wide and oversized but short, it looks really awkward to have bracelet length sleeves. I kind of want really long sleeves that cover a bit of my hand and kind of a longer body to just kind of like overall make it more cohesive, I would say. So yeah, for sure I have to frog the button band, fix that, and extend the cardigan in either the Kitchener stitch or just literally frog back and redo it. But yeah, I might dabble into that idea and look up some videos, see how hard it is. I really just don't want like weird tensioning issues when I Kitchener stitch the 2 pieces together. And yeah, I'm just kind of worried about that, but I think it could be doable. I do have like knitting needles that I can put both pieces on and then Kitchener stitch the 2 panels together. I'm a little bit scared for doing that, but I'll let you guys know in maybe the next podcast if I'm able to finish the Just sweater and start doing the Eva cardigan modifications. But yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of what I wanted to talk about in today's knitting podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you did, make sure you subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Comment down below what you're working on right now. I would love to know. And if you have any suggestions for like what future videos I should film. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye for now.